Good morning and welcome to Zen Live, or a new metaphor for your toolbox. And today we have a good show for you. And the metaphor is the wide-angle lens. Always use a wide-angle lens before you use a telephoto lens. Okay. What is Tolle's quote for today? The more limited, the more narrowly egoic your view is of yourself is, the more you will see, focus on, and react to the egoic limitations, the unconsciousness in others. Their faults, or what you perceive as their faults, become to you their identity. This means that you will see only the ego in them and thus strengthen the ego in yourself. So he talks here about the limited or more narrowly egoic view of yourself is, the more narrow. Now this is such a great place for the metaphor of the telephoto lens, and the wide-angle lens, as my photography bag has two. Now, if I look at something through this telephoto lens, only the object is very sharp, but the background is blurred. Now, if I put on the wide-angle lens, I see the whole environment, the whole context of the object, and everything's in focus. Then I put on the telephoto lens and just the object, and I can keep narrowing down. You can just look at the eye. See, it's a bird. You can just look at the eye. And then if you've got a really good one, you can just look at the eyeball or the pupil, you see. You keep zooming in. So it's zoom in, zoom out. It's kind of like on a Google map. So, how does this then become a metaphor? So let's pull this cotton ball apart. Remember a cotton ball? There's some seeds of wisdom in there. So, let's take a look at foreground and background. Okay. So if you're in a relationship, we're all in relationship, and relationship is always full of irritations, minor or great. There's a gradient there, a little pinprick or a wound, or I'm bleeding to death. See, so anyway, this is the foreground. Now let's take a look at here. So, all right, here you have the. And this is the way we perceive the world. I mean, this is everything. Anytime you look at some object, it's the foreground. If you're just relaxed, you're sitting on the front porch, you're in the park, you're not focusing on anything, you got a wide angle. You just got a 360 degree, or just got a panoramic view here. You're just taking in everything. And then something catches your attention. Zoom. Right? That's the way the mind works. Zoom, you see. And then you relax. Everything's okay. Wait a minute. What's that? There. Zoom. Oh, it's just a squirrel. You see? It's like animals. This is the way cats are. Watch a cat, In other words, if there's a movement, zoom, you see, focus. Is that a mouse? No, relax. You see. Is that a mouse? Zoom. No, relax. You see. And so you can see this in our own perception. Now here's the thing. If we just go around with a telephoto lens, whatever we focus on is going to have a blurred background. Now we know that meaning is given by context. Politics always screaming about, he took my words out of context. He cherry-picked it. So if you cherry-pick something, you change the meaning of it. You supply your own background. This is political advertising. Cherry-picks one little thing somebody said, put a green screen up there, change the background, changes the meaning of what they said. And, well, you said it. Yes, but you took it out of context. I don't care. You said it. You see? So this is a very skillful means to manipulate information and attack your enemy. And we should understand this. I don't want to digress here again, but we talk about Trump a lot. And Trump is an expert in the green screen. So he supplies his own, everything he sees, we're both looking at the same thing. He puts a different background to it and it has a different meaning. But it's right there, can't you see it? It's the same. So the foreground for the unawakened mind, an unawakened mind now is going to be a mind that only has a telephoto lens. Understand that. You just go around looking from one thing to another, and the meaning of everything, since everything has to have a background, but you can't see the real background because you don't have a wide-angle lens, but there has to be a background. You can't have a foreground without a background. Nothing exists with no background. This doesn't exist. This does not exist as a standalone object in the cosmos with no background. This exists only because of its relationship or the background to this. Put this in the jungle with some aborigines and they will know what this is. There's no background. Look in your grandmother's attic or in your grandfather's barn. Pick up tools. I have no idea what it is. The background has changed. What did they use this for? Could be a game. Fill in the background. So the point is, for a mind that has only a narrow focus lens, there has to be a background, but it's going to be supplied. So reality then becomes like a green screen upon which we project the background that gives meaning to the foreground. So if this person irritates me, there's a dissonance. There's an irritation in relationship. They always do that. It really bugs me that he leaves his socks out, or whatever the irritation is. And then the narrow focus lens, the telephoto lens, just sees that, you see. Every time I see that person, I see the irritation. But the meaning of that behavior that irritates me because of the green screen background that I put behind the person. Now, where does that background come from? Well, if I'm wearing a telephoto lens and looking around at the world, I'm also seeing myself with the telephoto lens. So when I see another object, if I look at if I'm looking at something, two things when there is a foreground, I see something, picture on the wall, two things arise simultaneously. The object being viewed and the subject at this end. You see, on this end you got a subject, on this end you got an object, right? They both rise together. You can't have an object without somebody viewing it, right? And a viewer has to have an object. So both of these ends, this end creates this end, and this end creates this end. They rise together. Neither causes the other. Looking through this does not cause what you're seeing, unless. Now, when we say cause, we don't mean the actual object, we mean the meaning of the object. See, everything has meaning, That's what human consciousness is. It's a meaning delivery system. What does that mean? I got to know what that means. We can't stand not to have something with a meaning, with a name, with a place, with a reason, you see. In 2001, the Space Odyssey was built around a black obelisk that rose, that appeared with apes and with the astronauts. Had no meaning, no reference. There was no way to put a background against it to say, what does that mean, you see? No background. So anyway, so we're trying to get our hands around this feeling, this sense that when the foreground appears, if I'm only using a narrow focus lens, the background behind the foreground to give it meaning is going to be supplied by me. Now, where does that background projection come from? And by the way, the background projection is always unconscious. I am not conscious when I have a telephoto lens on that I am supplying the background that gives meaning to the object I'm looking at. So the background is an unconscious projection. And where does that come from? It's my own background. The background that explains me explains the background of the object that I'm irritated with. So you see, two things happen here. This is very interesting. When I put on a telephoto lens, the viewer and the object rise together, and the background behind the viewer and the background behind the object that gives it meaning now is the same background that gives me meaning. So if I'm looking at somebody who irritates me and makes me feel like a victim, or they're doing it personally, or they won't stop, or some story behind that person, they always do that. You see, so whatever the background is that defines and gives meaning to that behavior is also the background that gives me meaning. So if that person is attacking me, the background says that. The background here says I'm a victim. Same background. Aggressor, threat, irritant, cause of my pain, victim. Same background. Both unconscious. Both unconscious projections. Now, so this narrow focus lens, when we put it on without having, all right, so how do we get to this, you see? Now, the wide angle lens does not project a background from my unconscious, it doesn't project my story onto them. You see, when I pick up this, and I'm the subject and the object, and the subject and the object both have to have meaning, the same background pops up to give both this pair of opposites, this dance between me and the object, me and this other person, the same background pops up to give consistent meaning to both. You can't have different backgrounds for two objects. Otherwise, you would be like you're in Brooklyn. The background would be you're Brooklyn, and you look at an object here in Brooklyn, and it's got San Francisco. You see what I mean? There has to be the same background, the same reality. If you're in Brooklyn and you look at a pigeon, and the pigeon's in San Francisco, the same pigeon, by the way, that's in, you're narrow focused on that pigeon in Brooklyn. The background of you is Brooklyn, and the background behind the pigeon better be the same background you're in. Otherwise, this is a magic lens. I'm looking at a pigeon in San Francisco. You see? So the background has to be consistent to hold the subject and the object. But when we only have a telephoto lens and we don't have a wide-angle lens, we supply the background to both the subject and the object. The reality that contains me and the person that's irritating me is an unconscious reality that is being projected onto the world as a green screen to give meaning to me and my story, and that guy is the new irritant in my life that is full of irritants. I go from one fault to another because the background is the same, the objects differ. It's like hunting birds, and every bird I see is a hawk that's going to eat me. Even a canary. Oh, it's a hawk. Watch out, watch out. Oh, it's a canary. In other words, I'm projecting the same background for me and the object, you see, which is I'm going to get eaten. Every bird's a hawk, you see, in that background. Everybody's a terrorist, you see. So I supply the bird. That guy's got a beard. He's a terrorist, you see. That guy's a little brown. He's a terrorist. That person is, see what I mean? The background reality that creates the story of me is being projected onto reality as a green screen. Now, how do we get to the wide-angle lens? Well, first of all, you have to suddenly see that something's wrong here. That the dissonance I feel with the world is not with the world, but in me. So instead of blaming the world for my pain, I become curious. Well, wait a minute. What's the truth here? This is repeating it. This is a Groundhog Day. That's the clue. When you see that the way you perceive the world is a pattern that repeats itself, different contexts, different birds, but everything is still a hawk. A robin. Oh, it's a hawk. No, it's a robin. You're okay. So when something begins to say, wait a minute, this is not right. Something's wrong here. I'm looking at things the wrong way. Now I begin to be curious, you see, about what kind of lens I'm using. I begin to relax my fixation on the fault of the other. I begin to question, is that really the truth of the other? Is that all that other person is? Just an irritating fault? Where does the meaning of that come from? You see, I begin to question. I begin to be curious. You see, I begin to want to catch myself in the cookie bar, with my hand in the cookie bar. That's the unconscious hand. I want to catch myself projecting back meaning behind everything. I want to see the projection light going to the movie screen. Wait a minute. I've been in this movie, but look, it's coming from a projection light. There's a projector up there. There's a projector up there. This is a movie. That's a screen. And I thought it was real. I thought I was in the movie. No, it's projection. Where is that projection coming from? Well, it's coming from two places. There's a collective projection machine. If you belong to a religion or any group, any tribe, any group that sees reality its way, you can darn be sure there's a projection machine that's throwing a movie on the world that everybody in that theater is watching. So everybody in the Trump camp is sitting in a Trump movie, watching a Trump movie that's being projected by the Trump story. And if you see the world just through liberal eyes, you're sitting in a liberal movie theater watching a movie projected by the liberal projector. You see? So groups carry a telephoto lens. And that's religions. Your belief about the world is a telephoto lens. You project your belief on the world and then argue with people who don't believe the reality that you project on the world, you see. So this is a very wide angle idea here. It covers a lot of ground. So we're coming down to the idea that my unconsciousness of the projector throwing meaning onto the world from me, defines the objects in the world that I perceive, and at the same time it defines myself. So defining others as bad, as the cause of my grief, defining others as the source of my pain, defining the world as the cause of my victimization by the world, defines myself. The definition, when I put on the telephoto lens with no wide angle, I have to supply a background that defines the object I see and the subject, which is the ego that sees the object you see. So this ego is a subject that narrowly defines itself by the objects it sees, misperceiving that it is not defined by what it sees, misperceiving to think that the ego stands alone and is seeing the truth of reality, which is that person is the cause of my pain. You see, fault is very interesting, because fault means that something in my relationship, in the world, in what I bought. So you go buy this at Walmart and it doesn't work. Now if that irritates you, now Walmart has hurt you. They should have it. They shouldn't have a faulty thing. I'm going to return this thing in. God damn it, every time I go there, that gets screwed up, you see. And I bet I lost the thing. Were they going to give it back? I bet I lost the slip. Damn, why don't I save things? Damn, see, in other words, it all because this didn't click. The pain of this not clicking the way it should, you see, is not in this. The pain is not in this, you see. There's nothing here. Click, it works. Oop, it doesn't work. That's just what it is. It works or it doesn't work. There's no meaning, there's no emotional content there. There's no irritation there. There's no, oh my God, again, I'm not going to Walmart anymore. That's, And they tell everybody, you know what happened to me? I bought this marker, this eraser, and it didn't work. I was so pissed off. And I tell everybody, and everybody, oh yes, you're right. I'm not going to go there either. You're right. That shouldn't happen. You see? Click, you see. But if we have a wide angle lens on, it's just a click. It doesn't work. That's it. Go get another one. Or don't go there. It doesn't matter. It's nothing. It's just a click, you see. Because you don't see it with the background of why me? Why this happened to me again, you see. So think about that. This whole idea here this is a great metaphor to have in your toolbox. So the next time the world or somebody irritates you, and you see that irritation, the story of that irritation, is a can that's being kicked down the road, and the thing that irritates you about the person may be different today than it was yesterday, but the feeling is the same. The feeling is the same. That's the clue. The emotional content of the story, the meaning of the story is the same. Whether they break a cup or they break your pen or whatever the fault is, the fault is always going to have a different context, a different situation. But the emotional pattern, the emotional meaning of the fault, they did it to me and I'm irritated with them, and why don't they stop? And what can I do to fix this and remove the fault? Should I point it out to them? Should I criticize them? Should I blame them? Should I punish them? Should I divorce them? Should I shoot them? You see? All of this is built up out of the trying to remove the fault that is being projected on them by me. Realization. Aha! Now, so the fault in religion, in awakening, in the traditions of transcendence, in the traditions of awakening and seeing with a wide-angle lens, the traditions of, this is what awakening is, by the way, seeing with a wide-angle lens, so there's no fault. You live in a no-fault zone. When you have a wide-angle Zen, the world is a no-fault zone, because the world is not doing anything to you. On purpose. So, awakening is discovering that you've got a wide-angle lens in your camera bag, in your mind bag. And it's a gradual process of seeing the telephoto lens and the meaning, your projection you're putting behind the object. It's a gradual process of seeing that. But the source of the process of letting go of your telephoto lens and putting on a wide-angle lens, when you put on the wide-angle lens, it's, aha! I see. So simple, so obvious. Harmony is restored between me and the world. That's awakening, or Satori in Zen, you see, or a creative idea. You got this problem. There's a fault. There's a dissonance. There's an irritation. I can't figure this out. A crossword puzzle. I can't get that word. There's a dissonance. It's a happy fault. The crossword puzzle is, I welcome the fault so I can have that aha moment when, oh, I know the word. Ha ha. We watch mystery shows. There's a dissonance. There's a fault. Somebody kills somebody. Unity has been disrupted. Harmony is destroyed. The detective inspector comes in. The inspector comes in. Looks at the evidence. Great tension. Tension builds. Who did it? Who did it? Who? Everybody. He did it. He did it. No, no, no. Hold judgment. Hold judgment. Wait. Wait. Hold. Collect the evidence. Aha! He did it. Harmony restored. Wide angle restored. So it's the wide angle lens that helps you find the evidence that connects the dots to have the aha moment that releases you from the dissonance and the tension and of the pain of the fault. So that will conclude with the realization that the wide-angle lens is always there, but unless you realize that you are already in harmony with the world, and that you cannot create harmony or restore harmony with a telephoto lens, which is what we try to do, so that harmony is restored to your life, and you are okay in every situation, even in painful, uncomfortable, life-threatening situations, that you are always in harmony, even when the world appears to be out of harmony, you are okay, you see. That realization cannot be discovered by using a telephoto lens. But the wide-angle lens is always there, because it is the source of the telephoto lens. In other words, if you have a zoom lens, here's a good thing to have, you see. Most photographers, I have one, it's called a zoom lens. So it starts with a wide angle, and then you zoom in, zoom, okay? Now the problem we're talking about here is that you have two lenses. You don't even have a wide angle lens, you only got a telephoto lens, so everything you see is going to be a sharp foreground with a blurred background. You don't even have a wide-angle lens. But you do. What we have, what we come with, is a zoom lens that has a wide angle and it narrowly focuses. So when you have what you're given with as humans, the zoom lens, the way you look at reality is that you start with the wide angle, you see the whole context, and then you narrow focus onto an object. And the meaning of that object is determined by the wide angle view you just looked at. But if you don't have that wide view to begin with, you're going to supply it from your unconscious. So the whole path here is making the unconscious conscious by rediscovering that we already have a wide angle lens. But you have to start with that. Or if you focus on something and say, wait a minute, I'm getting what's the truth of this object? I'm looking at something. What's the truth of it? If I want to know the truth, I just zoom out. Whoop! Aha! Oh wait, is that a snake? No. Is that a snake? Run! Wide angle. Whoop! Oh, it's a stick. If I don't have the wide angle, it's a snake, and I'm running from it. And I have to go find somebody else with a wide angle lens. So wait a minute, is that a snake? Oh no, it's a stick. You see. Okay, thank you so much for dropping in on this Sunday morning. I'll see you this evening.